Good day. So we're learning today, Imta Shem, out of Rosh Chodesh, Kislev, chapter 36, on page 90. Just to bring everyone up to date, the Alter Rebbe, from chapter 35, begins kind of a new theme within the theme of the Beinoni. And he reverts back to the mission statement on the cover page, the title page of Tanya, that every single Yid, every single Yid has the potential of being a Beinoni. And the Alter Rebbe in chapter 35 says that's because action speaks loudest. And he brought some, mute yourself, please. So the idea of he brought the Zohar HaKadosh. The Zohar says that the Yenuka, who was the son of Reb Namnunah Saba, he says that what is the oil that gets the candle to be lit? It is uvdan tovon. That's the language of the Zohar. Good deeds. By the way, it doesn't say Torah and mitzvahs, it says good deeds, which in the Zohar refers to that. But the reason I point that out to you is because the Rebbe once answered me in a letter that I should have alacrity when it comes to good deeds, b'chol in yonei toiv. And he didn't say b'chol in yonei Torah mitzvahs. Because sometimes there's something that's not necessarily a mitzvah, and it's not the Torah study, but it's a good thing. So in that as well, I should have zrizus. I should, have zrizus alacrity. I'm saying that the language in the Zohar is in a similar way. It says uvdan tovon. 1 second. Uvdan tovon. Good deeds. But the pshat in the Zohar, the way the Alter Rebbe brings the Zohar here in chapter 35, refers to Torah and mitzvahs. Moshe, I'll get to your question later. I want to cover some ground first, if you don't mind. So this was the theme of chapter 36, to the point where the Alter Rebbe said a startling statement, and that is that even a tzaddik gomer could be a yesh misha oyev. And I just want to add one tidbit to explain that. I was discussing it with someone here over Shabbos. The Alter Rebbe is not, in chapter 35, his objective is not to speak about the difference between a tzaddik and a beinoni. That's not his objective. His objective is to explain the difference between serving God with total bittul, humility, nullification, subservience, or serving Hashem as an independent being who has, as an adjunct to his or her being, God, Torah, mitzvahs. That's the difference. And the difference expresses itself whether between soul versus action, Torah, mitzvahs. Soul is serving Hashem with neshama, right? Even if it's the nature of your soul to be a good boy, to be holy, it's very nice, but it's still not one with God. It has an independent issue to it. And what's that independence? That I have the nature of liking God. When we talk about the opposite issue, which is serving God with Torah and mitzvahs, action, we're talking about leaving behind any trace of independence, even an independence that's natural to your being, and nevertheless doing what God wants. And that we call uvdan tovon. So the analysis in chapter 35 in Tanya is the difference between total selflessness versus an iota of selfishness, be it natural or imported, but regardless, it's not 100% subservient. That's the outcome of chapter 35. So now in 36, the Alter Rebbe asks a question. Who says that you have to serve Hashem with your nefesh habamis as well? Who says that? We hear that always. And the Alter Rebbe taught that in chapter 35. So he's not asking on himself without asking the question. He will start answering the question. Why must the animal drive, the nefesh habamis, the yetzer hara, also be involved? Not also be involved, but if you don't involve the yetzer hara and the nefesh habamis, then you really aren't serving God. You're serving yourself. Now, serving God like a good boy through the nefesh elikis is not the ultimate. So his question is, why not? Why must I get down and dirty? And guess what, Chavra? You know who asked this question? Every person who lives in Geula, in Mea Shearim, and in Borough Park. Why? I must go out to Timbuktu? I must go out to the kibbutzim? And it's not about going out. I must go into the real world. Why can't I just be in my little bubble, serving Hashem? I have my own yetzer hara in my own house and in my own community, not to speak lashon hara, not to fight, right? Why must I involve the nefesh habamis, the hardcore nefesh habamis? That's the question.
The whole point is to do a transfer.
But Yoini, that's the question. Who says God says so? The whole point. We say that's the whole point. In other words, it goes like this. The nefesh elikis also has its challenges. That's what I told you. You don't think a Jew living in Mea Shearim doesn't have his challenges? Why must a Jew of Mea Shearim go out to Tveria? Why must he go out to places? I mean, in concept, I'm talking concept. Why aren't the struggles that my nefesh elikis has adequate to fulfill God's objective in creation? That's what he answers in chapter 36. Let's see inside. Let's look what he says. Perek Lamed Vav, page 90. V'hinei meida zois, it's known. So he says, I'll tell you, it's known, and it's not my own chiddush. The Alter Rebbe says, my Razal, there is a teaching of Razal, of the sages. Shetachlis brias ha'olam hazeh hu shenesava HaKadosh Baruch Hu liyos leidira b'tachtenim. This teaching and these words are the key phrase to the answer and to Chabad's outreach, and that is that the ultimate tachlit, the purpose of Brias Ha'olam, of the creation of the world, Hazeh Olam Hazeh, of this world, not angel worlds and spiritual worlds, cosmic realities, but this world, who it is, Shenesaveh, very key word, God had a lust. That's what it says, Tava. It uses the word Tava. It doesn't use the word Ratzon, will. A very enigmatic word to use about God. And we'll talk about that later. God had a spiritual lust. Shedasava HaKadosh Baruch Hu, liyos loi. He wanted to have for himself dira, a home. B'tachtoinim, in the lowest world. This chevra is a medrash tanchuma on Parshas Nosai. So the first thing is you have to know the source, because people always ask and challenge on this issue. And the story that supports that is that in 1963 or 64, Rabbi Schneur Zalman Gutnick, who was the father of Rabbi Yossel Gutnick, the famous philanthropist from Australia, was by the Rebbe in Yechidus. I think it was his first time. Travel wasn't easy from Australia to America. He learned in Telz in Europe, in Lithuania, before the war, and he was a good friend of Rabbi Mordechai Gifter. Rabbi Mordechai Gifter was the Rosh Hashiva, one of the Rosh Hashivas in Telz, and later known to be what some considered an opponent of Chabad. And I've written a whole entire book on the relationship, and it's not exactly that way, but now is not the time to get into it. It's an entire book. But the word on the street is that, he had questions. But that's later. When he was learning in Telz in 1936 or 35, 37, those years, Gutnick was there as well, and they were good friends. And they remained good friends. So in 1964, when Gutnick had Yechidus with the Rebbe, he said to the Rebbe, I have a question to ask in the name of Rabbi Gifter. And he said, Rabbi Gifter is upset. One of the things he's upset with why it's important to reach out to non-frum people and, bring them closer. Now, mind you, this was at a time when the Kiruv world was just getting its feet wet and not wet enough. Chabad, of course, preceded them from the outreach that they did already in the 50s. In the 56 Sinai War, when the Rebbe called for not only a defensive approach, but an offensive approach going out to the soldiers. And I actually spoke to one of the leaders, he's already in Gan Eden, who was a chassid, and he was in the army, and he was one of the people who, brought the tefillin to the front and did things with soldiers. And that was because the Rebbe said, it's not enough just to sit back till they come to you, but go out to them like we have right now. Not only Chabadniks, Baruch Hashem, many others going, to the soldiers. Anyway, but at that time was not popular at all. So Rabbi Gifter asked this question. So Gutnick repeated it to the Rebbe, that agitated him. What's this business? The Messiah, the tradition of frum Jews, right-wing Orthodox Haredi Jews, was to sit and learn in a beis medrash, in a yeshiva. Not to go and put tefillin on with Jews, and not to, to start going to college campuses. Chabad went to college campuses at the time. It was the days of the first American shluchim, Rabbi Feller in Minnesota, Rabbi Cuden in California, etc., etc. So the Rebbe told Rabbi Gutnick to tell Rabbi Gifter, it's this medrash that the Alter Rebbe quotes in chapter 36 in Tanya. And he said to him, you shouldn't have tainus on me. Don't have tainus on me. It's this medrash. So Rabbi Gutnick told Rabbi Gifter, and he said, why do you guys pick this medrash? Is this the only medrash? And the Rebbe said, the Rebbe basically, for that, you need to learn Chassidus. You need to understand Chassidus. This isn't just a little medrash. In other words, the Alter Rebbe found himself a medrash to support his desire HaKadosh statement that where it's at is deeds, maaseh, tuvin, maaseh tovim, right? Good things. The Zohar says it. Do you have an earlier source? So the Baal Tanya here brings this medrash tanchuma that the purpose of the world is to make a dira b'tachtoinim, and a dira b'tachtoinim means the lowest of the low, with the boots, get in the mud and go out and make a dira b'tachtoinim. That means it's not a borough park in Williamsburg and Geula and Meir Shorim and Ramat Bet Shemesh, but it's out now when they're fighting, making a dira b'tachtoinim there. That's right. So the Rebbe said, if you understand what the Baal Tanya is explaining in Tanya, and Rabbi Gifter learned Tanya. He learned Tanya in Telz, because there was a group of Chabad Bacharim there in Telz, and they learned Tanya. Reb Shmuel Levittin, a known Lubavitcher Chassid, had a son there, and he would come from time to time and teach, and if I bring. So there was, but nevertheless, there's learning, there's learning here. We're all in our homes or in offices learning, very nice. And then there's implementing what you learn in the real world. But that's the answer. The answer is because of this medrash. And this medrash is Torah. It's not just a little medrash that the Alter Rebbe had nothing to do but to scratch up and to find one medrash. This medrash is demonstrative of the entire Torah. And that is, and look at the words. The words speak for themselves. That's a very, very powerful language. God had a lust, a spiritual lust, that we make for him a dira, a home, a base, a place where he can feel comfortable, like in your home. You could take your shoes and socks off and just enjoy. You come to shul, most people are wearing their shoes and socks. I know in Eretz Yisrael, some people don't, whatever, because maybe there's climate and there's hetatim. But the point is, you dress a certain way when you come to shul. A dira b'tachtainim. A house for Hashem. Hashem should feel comfortable in my house. Right? That's a question we should ask daily. Our families, ourselves. Is my house a dira for God? Will God walk through the door and say, hey, I feel so comfortable here. Oh, I love this place. That's what Hashem wants. And b'tachtoinen, not only working with the low of the low, but in the low. Like I told you a few shooting before, you want to host God, not on your terms, on God's terms. You, us, as tachtoinim, should host God on his terms. Where? In our domain, in our abode. So this is the key, I would say, phrase and concept of why Chabad engages so much in the outside world. It's based on this, and as you see, it has nothing to do with Chabad. It has to do with a Medrash Tanchuma. It's a Medrash. It's not Chabad. It's not Chassidus. It's pre-Chassidus. It's a Medrash. Now,
I did see a meme that said, coming soon, Chabad of Gaza City.
Yes, I've seen that. Okay.
And there was news that they made a minyan in an old shul in Gaza City this Shabbos.
Wonderful, Baruch Hashem. Thank you. Anyway, now, what's the concept of tava? Because since we learned it just now. Yes, Moshe. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm holding this off. I have something to share. This is something else. This is not the question I was going to ask before. So on Shabbos, Friday night, I was with a friend after the meal, and he was making a siyum. And he said, during this time right now, he said, everybody has to step up to the plate, do more, choose what they're going to do. Fine, very good. So he went on and on and on to talk about, I'll just cut to the chase. He said he decided that he's going to not go into work until after mincha midday. He's going to spend the entire morning learning. Fine. He learns a fair amount already, but he's very... But the point I'm bringing it up because when he said it, I said to myself, it just sounded so, just so staying within his comfort zone. Now, I'm not debating that it's good to learn, obviously. There's no question that learning Limud Torah helps it. No question. But it just did not seem to be, it seemed to be so not what the Alter Rebbe is saying. So not.
Look.
And it bothered me at the time.
Right.
It bothered me.
But look. Okay. Now I'm an outsider to the story. Right? We're all outsiders, right? So we could look at it a little more objectively. If for him this is contrary to his nature and contrary to what he's doing, then he is sacrificing. If it's just a continuation of his natural habitat, then he's not sacrificing, he's doing a very nice thing. But yes, he's not living out the Uvdan Tovon of chapter 35. And that's something that he could work on and we could work on. And I would look at myself and I ask myself, am I going beyond my nature? I don't know. So, when you say, Moshe, it didn't sit right with you, I understand. What you're saying is that it seems to you that this is his natural habitat, and therefore it's just a continuation. So, two things. One is a person should never be chas v'shalom discouraged from learning Torah, which he didn't do, of course, and B, it's a wake up call for you who heard who he shared, to ask yourself, whatever you're doing for the war, for everything else, is it more than your nature? And that's the cheshbon that's between you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But yes, that is along the lines of what he's saying here in Tanya. Whether there's a war or no war, it's not about a war every day. There's the routine, and then there is, what am I going to do to break the routine and really do something that's uncomfortable? Okay, what was the other point you wanted to say in the beginning? Chaparai now, before I go further.
I wanted to know, going back to what you said that the Rebbe said to you. The Rebbe said he encouraged you to be Masim Tovim.
The Rebbe's language was Zrizus b'chol inyonei tov. Have alacrity in all good matters. So what is your question?
The question is, was that common, for the Rebbe to use that type of language, to say that to people?
Common? No, I wouldn't say common. I would say more common would be, zrizus in all aspects of Torah and mitzvahs. Here he said b'chol inyonei tov. This was a personal instruction that he wrote to me. So I have not heard, I haven't heard from many others or anybody, for that matter, that they got such a instruction. They got other instructions. My father-in-law, for example, when he asked the Rebbe in 1958 or 59, after he arrived from Australia and he had Yechidus, and he asked the Rebbe, what is my kind of purpose in life? What's my tafkid? So the Rebbe said to him, and I'm paraphrasing, we don't know exact words, but something similar, is that whatever others don't want to do, you should do. That's the uniqueness of a tzaddik and a chassid who relates to the tzaddik, that there's the individual mission that every chassid gets, and then there's the klali, there's mission klali. And another example, another friend of mine, when he wrote to the Rebbe three separate times about issues in his life, including once when he had a life-threatening accident, the Rebbe said, check your tzitzis. Normally, the Rebbe would say, check your tefillin and your mezuzahs. And to him, he said, check your tzitzis. It seems to me that if it happened once, it's also a tzaddik, every word is exact, but happened 3 times, that means he's like, the way I see it, he's opening a little window into his soul and saying, your neshama has some special association with tzitzis, and make sure to check your tzitzis. So in that way, there's no question that those words that he wrote to me were unique and special, for everyone, but particularly for me, because he that was the instruction he gave me. In other words, if someone else would write, he might not get that same instruction. I don't know. Right. It's not. In other words, the instruction was based on an event. I told you the event that my wife had a life-threatening accident, and I described to the Rebbe how that took place. A drunk driver was driving at 90 miles an hour, being chased by the police on the 101 freeway in Northern California in Marin County. Right? And she was pregnant, and he went right into her. So I described that graphically to the Rebbe. So, and I asked him, what's the hoyro, what's the lesson mehamu'ura from that, what's the message here? So the Rebbe, in the PS of the letter, first he sent the letter to me that my wife she was pregnant 7 months with my son, that she'd have a healthy pregnancy and a healthy delivery. And then in the PS he wrote, the lesson from this episode, and that to me was like a direct response to my letter. I asked him, what's the lesson? So then he answers, this is the lesson. And he derived the lesson, the idea of zrizut. He didn't say, because you told me these details of how fast. I remember clearly writing that in my letter that the guy was speeding because the cop told me that. I repeated what the cop told me. How the cop was amazed, the policeman was amazed that she survived. The man was going at 90 miles, being chased by the police, and he's drunk. And the proof is the car was totaled.
Sure.
So I assume that the Rebbe took from the details that I wrote him about the speed issue a lesson to be speedy in all matters of goodness. But he doesn't say that. I'm putting the two together. I just want to be clear for the record, you understand? It makes sense. So whether someone else who would have a similar accident would get the same instruction and response, I don't know. Because that's already a neshama thing. That's a soul thing. You see, this is where we have to expand our consciousness and the way we look at a tzaddik. It's not like stationary. Oh, you're having a baby? Here's the blessing. 10 babies, 10 same blessings. It doesn't work that way. Even though the language in the letter of the Rebbe to the bar mitzvah, to the bas mitzvah, and to the chosin and kala, and to the bris seem the same, but we're not the same. So everyone gets maybe the same technical language, but it's to you. It's to the individual. Again, and some that don't believe this will argue it's baloney. It's a standard form letter with the Lubavitcher Rebbe's signature. So he sent it to me and he sent it to you. What's the difference? Doesn't work that way. But anyway, that's a discussion for something else. Let's not get those. Anyway, I just want to talk for a few minutes about this concept of nisava. So what does it mean to have a spiritual taiva? A taiva, we could maybe use the English word, an infatuation. Right? Someone gets infatuated with something, particularly in the areas of taivas, women and all that, men. Because I had a situation in Marin County, I think I told you, a very fine person came crying to me that his wife left him for another man, or is living at home, but she has another man. And he asks her why. She's infatuated with him. So it's not just men to women, it can be women to men. The Alter Rebbe uses this word. What's an infatuation? It doesn't make sense. There's no reason for it. I'm drawn to it. Why? I can't explain why. I'm drawn to it. I'm infatuated. The Alter Rebbe uses this word. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has an infatuation, has a taiva. And you know what that taiva is? Put on a pair of tefillin here in the world. Get up in the morning early. Take the hide of an animal. Right? This, come on. What is going on over here? This is going to make you happy, God? Yes, this is going to make me happy. Why? There is no why. There is no why. It's an infatuation. It's a taiva. Says the Medrash, Nisava Kodesh Baruch Hu liyas loy dira b'tachtoinim. Hashem says, I want you guys on earth to make the dira, not the angels, not the souls, not the heaven and the earth and all the celestial beings and all the great revelations. It's all a fascination. God doesn't want fascinations. Fascinations are good as a sidekick, But what Hashem wants is the mitzvah, the deed, the ma'asim tovim. That's what makes him happy. So the Medrash, another Medrash says, What's the difference in sheichet min hatzavar, right? The sheichet has to slaughter the animal, the chicken by the neck, or min ha'oiref. Oiref is the neck. Ich beslei? God cares where you slaughter the animal, the front or the back? If he wants slaughter it anyway, if that makes him happy. Says the Medrash, the reason why Hashem chose slaughtering from the tzavar and not from the oref is litzaref es abrios, to refine creatures. Somehow the act of shchita on the neck makes us more refined, and that's what he wants. So Chassidus also brings this medrash that I just quoted to you and speaks a lot about it. And the Rebbe has a discourse that he said in 1952, Parshas Mishpatim, where he brought this, and at that time at the Farbrengen, there was some old Chassidim of the Rashab still there, and the Rebbe was a young man of 53 years old, right? Or, 52, 50, whatever, was a young man, and they weren't acclimated to him. His whole style was different than the previous Rebbe and the Rebbe Rashab. You know, he's wearing a hat down with a tie. You know, his beard was rolled up for a while. I don't know if it was rolled up still in that time. You know, he didn't look what they considered to be a Rebbe, with a shtreimel, a spudik. You know the whole scene. I don't have to tell you. So, but, you know, they had their echeres, because the young Bachrim in 770, the guys, the boys, as we call them, they were the Rebbe soldiers. And they were telling their parents and grandparents, some of these people, this is the real McCoy. This man who looks modern compared to what you know and from Europe, and even though he was from Europe too, this is the real tzaddik. So at this mimer, there was one or two of these people there, from Eretz Yisrael actually, and he said a mimer, and with that mimer, he bought them. He sold. They got sold on the Rebbe in that mimer because he was very emotional, and he spoke concepts and ideas that they saw that this is the real McCoy. So one of the things that he discussed in that famous mimer, Parshas Mishpatim, 1952, Lo Tiyeh Meshakela, which is the pasuk in Parshas Mishpatim, was the Divrei HaMaschil, the beginning of the mimer. He spoke about this medrash that I cited you, that I quoted you. Ma'ich b'zlei HaKadosh Baruch Hu sheichet min hatzavar or min ha'oref el letzaref es abrios. And he explained that the punchline, the message of the medrash is, do it my way, God's saying. Don't do it your way. That's what I want. You want to slaughter from the back. It's easier, whatever. Right? No. Put yourself aside and slaughter the way I want you to slaughter, from the front. But why, God? It's easier for me to just do the shechita from the back. The answer is, you're mine, you're subservient, or you're still a yesh. You still have an existence, you still have an opinion, and you want to do it your way. And that's what it's about. And when these chevra heard this from the Rebbe, this was the whole idea, because the Rebbe spoke in that mimer also about loving God and fearing God and having will for God, having pleasure. But at the end of the day, it's all it's my derech. It's like what Moshe said earlier, it fits into my comfort zone. Yes, I'm going to do something, but all what I'm used to, what I'm comfortable. You don't say that, but that's what you're doing. So the Medrash says, no. You have to do it the way the Eibishter wants, the way God wants. Letzaref es abrios. And the purpose is to refine creatures. It doesn't mean to refine creatures that by shechting through the neck and not through the neck of the front and not the back, you become a better person because somehow it evokes better midos in you. That's not the point. It's because you're subservient to Hashem. So the Eibusher that's the idea. That's what we're learning here in Tanya. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants nisaver. So that's why the language of the Medrash is not the Ratzon Hashem, that God had a will. The language is tava. It is an infatuation. It makes no sense. And that's exactly what he wants. That's the way Chabad Hasidus explains this medrash, and it's an ikar in the entire learning system of the Balatanya and Chabad for generations is this concept. And you'll hear this from any knowledgeable Chabad bocher or girl who went through the system. This will be the statement. What does God want? God wants adir b'tachtonim. Hevra, we'll continue tomorrow. Seid gesund, b'suras tevis. Good day. Slocha.
Yeah.
Take care.